Technique 1. Screening interview.
Screening interviews are done in order to figure out if an applicant possesses the qualifications required for the open job position within the company. This is usually the first interview.
These types of interviews can be done either in person or on the phone. The method doesn't change the purpose, which is to find out if the candidate is qualified to move into the second part of the hiring process.
The screening interview can be done in many ways, including in person, by video, phone, or even computer.
Technique 2. Phone interview.
If a company is needing to fill several positions, or they receive many applications for open job positions, they may opt for a phone interview. This method helps reduce the candidates that are not qualified before moving into in-person interviews. In addition, if the company is hiring internationally, it can save on travel costs.
Technique 3. Stress interview.
These kind of interviews purposely put the candidate under pressure. This helps the employer find out just how the applicant will react and perform when situations get challenging.
One method for conducting a stress interview is done by the employer putting together a group of interviewers and having them intimidate the applicant. This can be done one at a time or all at once. This puts the interviewee under pressure while answering. The overall purpose of a stress interview is to learn how the applicant functions under stress and pressure. The questions are generally focused on how one handles too much work, or an extremely busy day. Then how they handle having multiple projects, and how they react to conflict in the workplace. Technique 4. Technical interview.
The overall purpose behind any interview is to learn about the candidate and evaluate them, their skills and ability for the position. In order to hire for a system or programming job, the company would need to be sure the candidate has the required qualifications. So they would evaluate their skills in language and coding. A majority of companies in this field require coding samples and explanations of the code line by on what it's doing. Some questions for technical interview.
1. Explain what your job description is. 2. How do you approach daily tasks? 3. What are the output results? 4. What tools do you work with in order to complete the task? Technique 5. Group interview.
A group interview consists of several applicants meeting with the interviewers together. There are more companies starting to use this method in order to weed out the candidates that are not qualified. And knowing what to expect is important. Generally, this method will include many interviewers instead of just one. The group may consist of future supervisors, managers, HR, and co-workers all in the same room. The basics of group interviews includes a presentation that goes over the company, followed by a section for questions and answers.
This method helps in two ways. The first is it allows the employer to provide information to the applicants in a time-saving and economical way. The other purpose is to allow the interviewers the ability to watch each of the applicants' behavior, how they treat each other, and to observe the communication skills they possess. Technique 6. Lunch interview.
In this method, the employer takes the candidate out to lunch, sometimes dinner. This is often the case when client interaction is required, as it allows them to evaluate them in a social setting. They will view how they react under pressure and how they use their social skills.
This is a well-rounded interview. By taking you up, the interviewer will also see how you communicate with others, what type of interpersonal skills you have, and if you have good table manners in a casual setting.
Having good manners is a positive thing and can give you a lead on other candidates. Because of this, you should refresh your table manners and know your dining etiquette.
Technique 7. Behavioral interview. When being asked questions about behavior, this opens the chance to give examples of previous performances and how it could benefit your future work performance. The interviewer will be inquiring about what your actions were in certain situations, instead of what would you do. For example, what is a situation where you displayed good leadership abilities? Your response could be provided by the STAR model. This model includes
1. Situation. This is where you are presenting the interviewer with the situation. 2. Task. This is where you explain what your goal was. 3. Action. This is where you explain what steps you took to reach the goal. 4. Results. This is where you explain what your outcome was, what you achieved, and if you meet your goal.
Technique 8. Situational interview.
This style of interview has the candidate answering questions that refer to dealing with work-related situations, and how they would go about it. These are focusing on common situations in the workplace, and the purpose is to learn the skills each candidate has and if they're qualified for the position. The scenarios are generally ones from the company's past. For example,
as the leader of the lab team, you're facing a challenging situation of two members of the team arguing over who's to get credit for the accomplishment at hand. How do you deal with it? Technique 9. Panel interview.
This type of interview takes a number of members from the company and has them interviewing the candidate all at one time. These members are generally the hiring manager, a member of human resources, and a client of the company. Each member takes a turn asking a question to the candidate.
This gives each member the chance to ask a question, and all of them hear the same response. They usually have a pre-made list of questions to ask.
A one-on-one interview is generally done face-to-face between the candidate and interviewer, who also decides if the candidate is qualified for the position or not in most cases.
This method often follows a group or panel interview, and you have proved your skills are qualified for the position.
Now you must be prepared to answer certain specific questions about you and the job. Making it through this stage requires creating a friendly relationship between you and the interview, and showing your qualified skills and abilities once more.
Technique 11. Follow-up interviews.
Depending on the position, there could be thousands of applications sent in, and the process for recruiting can become a challenge.
These situations can lead to many screening-style interviews in order to lower the candidate numbers.
You will have to be able to pass the follow-up interview to make it future in the hiring process.
This method can also include multiple interviewers. Patience is important with this method. Technique 12. Final selection interview.
In any hiring process there is a final decision maker, and it's up to them to ultimately decide if you are hired or not. You will generally meet with this person within the third interview stage.
They will interview you themselves and ask you questions that are strict. And out of all those who applied for the job, only a few make it to this stage. If you make it through this part, you've landed the job. If you lose it here, you could lose the job as well.
However, you could remain in the list of possible candidates. Just remember to have patience. Be polite. Remain professional and stay friendly.
Before making their choice, the employer may ask around to people you have come in contact with at the company, from the parking attendant to the interviewers. How you treat others could affect being hired, so remain calm while going up against this VIP.